That is James Mennie. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. And Jim, so we had Pablo Rodriguez on Tout le monde en parle. We had Mauro
Yeah.
Risky come out with a statement. Do we know anything more than we did 48 hours ago?
Not really. I mean, the fact of the matter is, Ms. Rizky basically said, "Listen, this entire incident is a human resources, an HR thing, and in this jurisdiction, it's illegal to publicly discuss an HR case, a case involving an employee's conduct or allegations against that employee." So, she's obviously sort of like just trying to say, listen, if I'm being quiet, it's not because I'm guilty of something. I'm being quiet because the law compels me to be quiet. But I think there's for me, the biggest twist, and even though it's being described as a small group of party militants, the idea that, once this external review of the Liberal Party, or this particular instance of the Liberal Party, is gone through, we get the results, we should convene a general council meeting and hold a leadership review of Pablo Rodriguez. And I thought, gee, this is pretty soon in the game, but it seems to confirm the suspicion more and more. And I sort of touched upon this over the years, Aaron, is that ever since 2018, the Liberal Party never really recovered from its shell shock. It never really got over the fact that it got whipped not once but twice by the Coalition Avenir Quebec, and very decisively, that it was reduced to being the Liberal Party of the West Island of Montreal, essentially. And now here we have a situation where, because the CAQ is imploding, it looked like the Liberals were on the verge of something, perhaps a breakthrough. I mean, they were coming up in the polls. Yes, there was a lot of work to do with the Francophone electorate. But now with this, as I say, this is going to taint the Liberal brand for the foreseeable future. And, you get into, I hate to say it, you get into those kind of cultural cliches, like the Cavendish extension, like, the Canadians rebuild. And now we're going to have, the Liberal reset, or maybe not. And if it becomes known for that, if it becomes known for having to deal with its own self-inflicted gunshot wounds to the foot, listen, it doesn't bode well. Everything is up for grabs in Quebec City right now. Because even though, yes, theoretically, the PECs are leading, that lead is narrowing, and we're discovering on an almost daily basis that perhaps the more we hear, when I say we, I'm including all Quebecers, yes, because I am, trust me, 100% Quebecer myself, me personally. But the fact is, the more we hear from Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, the more we wonder if this is the guy who we really want to have running things after October of 2026. So here's this window of opportunity, which seems ready to come, rattling down on the fingers of the Liberals, simply because of what appears to be. And we're not talking about something inside baseball. The suggestion that you're paying for votes, I don't care if it's legal or not illegal, perhaps more accurately described. It's so skeevy that it brings us back to those bad old days of the perception of the Quebec Liberal Party. So I'm not sure this is over, Aaron. I think it's going to be. I hope I'm wrong, but I think it's going to. How can I put it? Spread or metastasize beyond what we're talking about right now, beyond, whether votes were paid for, beyond whether there's a clash between Mauro Rizky and Pablo Rodriguez, that we are going to see perhaps an exponential sequence of events that will either, perhaps hit the reset button for the Liberals or perhaps drive it off a cliff.
There is also the thinking, Jim, I heard someone mention this, that if this does, in fact, just get worse or doesn't get resolved, because let's face it, we're not that far away from a provincial election, right? Who steps in if Pablo Rodriguez has to step away? And I think to myself, the last race, we tend to forget this, was a lot closer than people think, right? Charles Milliard came close to winning that race, and Carl Blackburn wasn't even that far out in the first round either. So how would it play out?
Well, if I recall correctly, Milliard came in first in the first round, but he didn't get his 50%. It was the second round where Rodriguez won the leadership. But you're quite right. And yet I also found it at once, I guess, it normal, but also significant that as this call for a special meeting of the party for a leadership review was being made, both Milliard and Blackburn publicly stated their support for Pablo Rodriguez, which, if nothing else, is like, the thing to do with all capitals, because let's face it, we can't have the party, cutting itself to shreds the way it did in the wake of the 22 election, and the way that then leader Dominic Anglade was treated by sources within the caucus, by sources, the former Liberal ministers. I don't think they want to see that return to that, although that's my concern. I think, down the road, and I say down the road, I'm certainly mean between now and the holidays, we're going to see some headline with, the problems continue within the Liberals, citing anonymous sources either within the caucus or, senior Liberal officials saying, we're kind of paralyzed and we have to get out of this and we're worried about the future of the party. So, yeah, when that becomes part of your brand, you got some problems, because you're right. I mean, we have complained, you and I, that election seems like a zillion years away, but it's less than a year. But this is when, if you're going to, jockey for position, if you're going to, put yourself on the map, this is when you do it. This is when you start talking to those Francophone voters who you want to bring into the fold. And right now, the only thing those voters are seeing are headlines that are saying Liberal Party's in a bit of a mess right now.
All right, so we move on from that, and then we have a couple of things. I'm going to be talking to Tristan Hopper later. I don't know if you happen to see his piece in the National Post on this Bill 1, which really hasn't been getting a lot of attention. I know Alison Haynes had written the piece on this the other day. This redoing or establishing of a Quebec Constitution that I think some people actually call chilling and draconian, and we don't talk about it at all. But that aside, you got Quebec unions now, as you're describing it, revving up their own engines, right? Because this is the next piece that the CAQ is trying to run through again.
Yeah, because, let's be clear here, okay? And I'm not breaking away from anything I haven't been saying over the past 8 years. I would love to have the concession for the cocktail napkins that the CAQ actually writes its laws down on, okay? So basically you're talking about a so-called constitution where basically it says, you do what the government says, end of story.
Yeah.
Bill 3, that's Bill 1, the bill of all bills. But Bill 3 essentially says, you know what? Unions can go on strike until, I guess, enough people call radio talk shows, and then we'll legislate you back to work. We want to have the same powers as the federal government to essentially unilaterally remove your right to strike, tell you how to spend your union dues, okay? And the unions, and with some justice, and I know there are people listening to me right now who says, it's high time they went after those people. Well, maybe it is, but the fact is it's the right to strike, the right to unionize, and the right for unions to work independently of the government is essentially guaranteed in the Constitution of this country. So this country, when I would say this country, I mean Canada, by the way, folks. So the fact is, for the CAQ, once again, to start trying to crowbar its way into essential, guarded legal rights, because, well, you know what, it's going to probably maybe, hit the defibrillator on our numbers for the next Leger poll. It's downright scary. So you have the STQ, and you have the CSN, and you have the Confederation of Independent Unions this afternoon, all saying the same thing. Drop this. Stop this right now. It's completely illegal. And the fact is, we seem to be heading towards, I want to be careful how I phrase this, but it's not Trumpism per se, but a Trumpist way of dealing with legislation, which is to say, to create perhaps in press conferences a situation which certainly doesn't exist, but one which in fact will work to the advantage or the populist advantage of the government of the day. And as I've always said, whether it's Bill 21 or whatever, or the notwithstanding clause, be careful. We're not talking about the CAQ here. We're talking about any government henceforth that comes down the pike is going to have essentially the jurisprudence, the precedent of saying, right, schmites, we'll do what we want. We'll put a notwithstanding clause on it. We'll let it go for 5 years. If we get voted out of office in those 5 years, let someone else clean up the mess. But in the meantime, kiss your rights goodbye. This is for real stuff, Aaron. This is where Quebec is going. And to a certain extent, the situation that I rather flippantly described is in fact codified in Bill 1, the Quebec Constitution.
Look, we used to say sometimes that the CAQ was trying to out-PQ the PQ, but I don't even think that's fair anymore, right? I mean, this is completely over the top in this bill.
It is over the top. And my concern, as I've said before, is that a lot of people who've got a lot more on their minds, and you know what, justifiably so, because the economy is not getting better. And affordability is not just a buzzword. It's a very, very grim reality for a lot of people, and not just so-called, underprivileged families. A lot of middle-class families, and I mean middle-class families, are feeling this pinch, okay? But here we are having these arcane discussions about, redirecting rights. People just get numb. They get punch drunk, and they get into a situation where the government, they're going, yeah, whatever. But, have you seen my bill from Costco? This is crazy. So this is where we are. And the government's taking advantage of this. This government's taking advantage of it. And my concern is, no matter who gets elected the next time around, how far will they go in taking advantage of that numbness, of that exhaustion on the part of the electorate, and basically ramming through so-called legislation that nobody would have thought of 10 years ago.
Jim, I'm going to wrap up, but I did want to ask you, so we had a chance to talk to Paul St. Pierre Plamondon the other day on the podcast, and I've never seen reaction with respect to comments like I have for that particular piece. I asked this the first time around because I know the headline said, and that's the thing that I think got most people looking and go, what did he just say? Paul St. Pierre Plamondon said, I hope I can convince Anglophones to be 100% Quebecers. But the rest of that sentence is because the fact is they are. But I wonder, because the reaction I'm taking from so many people is, you know what? I like the guy. Clearly, I don't like this idea of separation. Does the PQ at some point just say, you know what? We have a win in our hands here if we focus on the issues that really affect people, which are healthcare, the economy, whatever it happens to be. The CAQ is in such disarray. Yeah, that's an easy win, but they're not prepared to go there. Is that accurate?
I think it's accurate, and I think the fact that, one of the big priorities is to get the leader's foot out of his mouth. Because I tell you, I bristled when I first heard that quote, but then it occurred to me as well that he could be saying, and because remember, if you're speaking a second language, no matter how fluent you are, you're always thinking in your own language. And the thing is, I think he meant to say, or what the meaning or the essential of what he was saying was that if you're part of Canada, you're not 100% Quebecer, but if you leave Canada, you by default, you'll be 100%. Right. And I know I'm cutting him some slack there, Aaron, okay? But the fact is, we have heard for generations, how many apparatchiks, how many political hacks have turned around with a straight face, said into a microphone like, essentially, we get to decide who a Quebecer is. And, maybe if they behave, we'll let Anglos and Allos and immigrants be Quebecers too. And it is the biggest pile of rubbish. And I think to a certain extent, that's why you're seeing the blowback on this relatively mild comment from the leader of the PQ. But all that said, as I say, it's a matter of words. Words matter, and people. If there's any quote from Paul St. Pierre Plamondon that'll be remembered at the moment, it's the one he made during the corner booth.
Yeah, you're right. Sad but true, perhaps, for him. But all right, Jim, I thank you. I appreciate it.
Pride is like love. You feel it in your heart. iHeartRadio, Canada's #1 streaming app for radio and podcasts, including iHeart Pride Canada, your favorite hits, and must-have party bangers, plus personalized and curated playlists like Back in the Day Pride.
Come together, celebrate love.
Take Pride with you, anytime, anywhere. Just ask your smart speaker to play iHeart Pride Canada. Stream us on your phone or listen now at iHeartRadio.ca.